All right, good afternoon. I'm Attorney DeMario Solomon Simmons, and along with my legal team, which includes David Riggs of Riggs Avenue and Jana Knott of the Bass Law Firm, we're excited to have the opportunity to continue to represent Creek Freedmen and Black Creeks in our quest for citizenship and justice, and particularly in this particular case representing Rhonda Grayson and Jeff Kennedy. I also have standing here is Sharon Lindsay Scott, also Creek Freedman or Creek Freedman descendant. And then we have House of Representative-elect Ronald Stewart for this area, House District 73.
Correct.
That's with us here today. And Mr. Stewart, Representative Stewart, is also a enrolled member of the Choctaw Nation. And I'm glad everyone is here today because the Muscogee Creek Nation, understanding and realizing, particularly the leadership of the nation, being the principal chief and the National Council, understanding they have no basis at all to continue to oppress and discriminate against Creeks of African descent, also known as Creek Freedmen. And they understood that they believe that they have no ability to win underneath the law. So they conspired together to concoct a plan to unlawfully, illegally, unconstitutionally appoint two quote-unquote special justices to hear our case at the end of this month, which is on July 26th. These so-called quote-unquote special justices to be on our particular case only, justices who have been appointed to vote against Creek Freedmen and Creek Freedmen citizenship. In fact, as I will show you a little bit later, one of the justices who've been appointed is on video specifically stating that he's against Creek Freedmen citizenship. This is such an affront to the rule of law. It is such an unbelievable development. In my 20+ years of practice, I've never heard of anything like this. This goes against everything we learned about the law as far as impartiality, as far as due process, and it's simply wrong. They literally did this, literally, under the cover of darkness. One night, did this in an emergency session. They did not allow any members of the Creek Nation, any citizens, to review this law, where they passed a law to give themselves the ability to appoint who they wanted to the court to make sure that they vote against the freedmen. Now, before I show you this particular video that substantiates what I'm telling you, I just want to give a small history of how we got here. Creeks of African descent, or Black Creeks, have been a part of the Creek Nation going back centuries before European contact. Around the 17th, 18th century, some Creeks who started to adopt plantation-style economies started to enslave Creeks of African descent, or Black Creeks, or even Africans. That continued up until the Trail of Tears in the 1830s. During that period, when the Creek Nation was one of the 5 tribes that was removed or forced to leave our traditional homelands of Alabama and Georgia and Florida. Along that Trail of Tears included people that looked like myself and Rhonda and Jeff and Sharon, some were enslaved, some were full citizens. And that enslavement continued here in the Indian Territory until 1866, when the Treaty of 1866 was signed. Specifically, June 14th, 1866, and in Article 2 of that treaty specifically ended all enslavement within the Creek Nation, and it guaranteed that Black Creeks, or Creeks of African descent, would have full citizenship. And not just those individuals who may have been enslaved or citizens at the time, but their descendants would have citizenship. And that continued. And then in 1906, with the Dawes Rolls, the Creeks of African descent was put on a Dawes Creek Freedmen roll. Because of one drop of black blood, they would put you on a Creek Freedmen roll. It was a discriminatory roll to discriminate against Creeks of African descent. That was the purpose of the Dawes Creek Freedmen roll. And in 1979, the Creek Nation, specifically utilizing the anti-Black Creek Dawes rolls, Creek Freedmen rolls, decided to kick out Creek Freedmen, including Rhonda Grayson including Jeff Kennedy, including Sharon Lindsay Scott, and thousands of other Creeks of African descent who were full citizens until that time. That is 44 years ago. And ever since 1979, Creeks of African descent have been fighting for tribal citizenship, for our birthright, for our history, for the programs and benefits that are due to us and our children as Creeks. That fight happened and had an impasse last year that was amazing. When the district court judge, Judge Danetta Mauser, decided that the Treaty of 1866, the same treaty that today the Creek Nation is celebrating, because today is the Creek Nation Sovereignty Day. And Sovereignty Day is actually a celebration of the McGirt decision from 2020. And that McGirt decision is based upon what? The Treaty of 1866. So while the Creek Nation wants everyone else to adhere to the Treaty of 1866, they didn't want to adhere to the Treaty of 1866. But Judge Mauser, despite the Creek Nation's leadership trying to intimidate her, actually threatening her job, and this is not my words, this is the words of Judge Mauser, who actually sanctioned the Creek Nation's Attorney General last July. And I'm going to read what she stated. It is clear to this court that defendants, that's the Creek Nation's counsel, sought to find any avenue or excuse or justification, legitimate or otherwise, for the failure to comply with the court's order, even asking the court to take judicial notice of an administrative order from the Muscogee Creek Nation Supreme Court, which lays out the grounds for recalling in District Court, a Muscogee Creek Nation District Court. At a June 30th, 2023 hearing, upon being handed an administrative order by counsel for defendant, the court questioned counsel in open court regarding the motive for presenting her with this order. None of the defendant's counsel were able to articulate any rational explanation. Thus, the court's only inference can be that the true motive of such an action was at worst a veiled threat of removal from the bench, or at best an attempt to intimidate the court prior to its ruling on plaintiff's motion or the final judgment. The reason I wanted to make this clear is because this is a pattern of the Creek Nation. Last year, they knew they didn't have a basis in law to win the district court case, so they wanted to actually intimidate the judge. But she didn't fall for it. She decided on September 27, 2023, that the Treaty of 1866, specifically Article 2, requires that Black Creeks throughout this country, wherever they are, their descendants are required to have citizenship. And so now we fast forward where the president, or the principal chief of the Creek Nation, Chief Hill, after the decision, specifically went to Facebook and stated that he was going to fight the decision for Creeks of African descent to have full citizenship, reminding us of George Wallace of Alabama, who said segregation today, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. And so they started fighting and stopping these individuals from enrolling into the Creek Nation. And they filed an appeal with the Muscogee Creek Nation Supreme Court. And that appeal will be heard July 26th of this month at 10 a.m. in Muscogee. And we've been preparing as a team to present our case. We feel strong. We know the law is on our side. But obviously the Creek Nation leadership also knows the law is on our side. So they conspired together to put people on the court unconstitutionally, illegally, to put people on the court just to rule against us. And these are not just my words. I'm going to show you a video of one of the individuals who has been appointed as a special justice to hear just our case alone, and that's it.
So just to recap where we are right now, 2 justices have recused, Leah Harjo-Ware and Amos McNack, and then they are going to be replaced on the Freedmen case by James Jennings and Samuel Deere, okay? And this all happened, and that was made possible by this legislation that was also passed in the same session. So they nominated and confirmed the guys and passed the legislation which created the positions for them to be nominated and confirmed into, all in the same session. Okay, in an emergency session. So citizens didn't have time to look at any of this or give their input, and that's the way that they normally do it with emergency sessions. So I did want to mention one more thing. Mr. Jennings ran in 2023, and it just so happens that he was asked specifically about this case. I'm going to pop it up on the screen. And you can see there at the bottom in the chat, Laura Shirley is asking, what is your position on the Treaty Freedmen case? I'm going to put my little headphones on and play this for you guys so you can hear it too.
And
All right. Laura Shirley asks, what is your position on the Treaty Freedmen case?
my opinion on the Treaty Freedmen case is that if elected, I will support and defend the Muscogee Nation Constitution, which states it's by blood.
Okay. All right, guys. So there you can see, I don't know how you can nominate him and think that he's going to go against what he just said there, right? It looks like, there's no requirement for a Supreme Court justice at the Creek Nation to be a lawyer or have any, they're not required to be neutral in any way. So that's one vote, right? Now, Mr. Samuel Deere, he did run in 2021.
So you guys get to hear it for yourself. They passed an emergency session in the cover of night, unconstitutional, placing someone on the court who already is stating that he's going to vote against the Treaty Freedmen. This goes beyond any bounds of rule of law. It is completely absurd. And one of the things that we've asked, and you all will get a copy of our filing that we filed with the Creek Nation yesterday, when we asked in the Supreme Court to step in and invalidate this law as unconstitutional, making it void, and not seat these so-called special justices. This doesn't just impact our particular Creek Nation, our Treaty Freedmen case. Because the Creek Nation, because of McGirt, has jurisdiction over much of Northeast Oklahoma. This means that over 1 million people come underneath, in some form or fashion, Creek Nation jurisdiction. The Creek Nation has the ability to put people in prison. The Creek Nation has the ability to fine people. The Creek Nation has the ability to decide business disputes. This means that anyone that's going through the Creek Nation Supreme Court or court system could be subject to this type of kangaroo activity, where they don't want you to be successful, or they want to make sure that you are convicted. They want to make sure that whatever outcome that they want, that they can decide, we're going to appoint certain special justices on the court just to make sure they get the outcome that you want. And we've seen this so many times throughout history, where organizations and governments will stoop to the lowest levels to continue to oppress black people. And this is what's happening here. But we are asking the Supreme Court of the Muscogee Creek Nation to step in and say, no, this is not the rule of law. This is not how this works. You cannot tell us that you're going to put these special justices on here. And the Creek Nation leadership has to accept that the treaty allows for Creek Freedmen or Creeks of African descent to have full citizenship, and stop trying to intimidate judges, stop trying to put people on there that's going to vote in a certain manner, and just let the law be the law. As they tell the governor, as they tell the state legislators, they always say that the treaty is the treaty, and it gives us the right to do certain things. And we agree with the treaty being the treaty. We just want them to adhere to Article 2 of the treaty, which to affirm the citizenship rights of people who rightfully have it. And before I answer any questions, I would just, Jeff, Rhonda, if you'd like to say anything, make any comments.
Thank you. I'll just say this one thing, and I'll be very, very brief. But during the proceedings of the district court, I was continuously asked the question if I thought that the district court judge would rule fairly. I repeatedly said that I believe in the justice system. I believe that the Creek Nation, I believe that Judge Miser would be a fair judge, and she was. If you asked me that question today, I would have to say unequivocally no, because of the actions of the chief of the nation and the Supreme Court. I believe that it is unjust, it is a disgrace, and it undermines the National Council. Thank you, the National Council. It undermines the integrity of the Creek Nation, its forefathers, the ancestors. This is not what they would have, and I believe it's a disgrace, and justice needs to prevail.
I'm Jeff Kennedy. I usually don't have a lot to say, but I got a little something to read, so if y'all bear with me. Yeah, to the team of Demario Solomon Simmons, Riggs Abney, Neil Turpin Orbison, Lewis, Dr. Terry Crutcher of the Crutcher Foundation, Justice for Greenwood, Greenwood Justice for Black Creeks, Muscogee Creek Indian Freedmen Band, and all that support us in our plight for citizenship back into the tribe of our ancestors' birth. Back in March, I released a statement, and when our attorneys filed our response to the Muscogee Creek Nation Citizenship's Board appeal of the district court's long overdue decision that vindicated our rights as rightful citizens of the MCN, I stated, we fought a long, and I'm going to repeat, long, hard fight for justice. I'm going to say that again, justice. And now we're asking the Supreme Court to do the right thing and affirm, again, affirm the district court's just and lawful decision upholding our rights under the 1866 treaty, which has been the law for more than 150 years. I still stand by that statement. And just please keep in mind that the saga continues, which is still considered our modern day Trail of Tears, and that the Treaty of 1866 is still the supreme law of the land.
Thank you, Judge.
Appreciate it. Good afternoon. My name is Ron Stewart, Representative-elect, House District 73. So I just want to be brief as well and just say why I'm here. I am here in support of Justice for Black Creeks. I am here in support of Attorney Demario Solomon Simmons and his team. And I am here in support of the Black Creek freedmen that reside within the boundaries of House District 73. It is my intention to use all of my influence in the full weight of this office as state representative to ensure that the rights of Black Creek freedmen are respected. As an enrolled member of the Choctaw Nation, and again, the representative of many Black Creeks freedmen in House District 73, it is my plan to reach out to the Muscogee Creek Nation and express my disappointment in light of these new developments, and that at their willingness, or the lengths that it appears that they're willing to go to continue to discriminate against Black Creek freedmen. And I want to make sure that the rights are protected and respected as per the Treaty of 1866. And I also, lastly, just want to reiterate the importance and really stress the notion that it is this type of reckless and lawless behavior, and it is these type of actions that put all treaties at risk. Thank you.
I also wanted to just say, we only learned about this action, this activity, by a whistleblower sending us an email or a note saying, hey, do you know this is happening? Do you know that this has happened? I think you need to really look into this. And honestly, when I first heard about it from my office, we get so many emails where people say things, I didn't believe it. And once I saw the video, I was just floored again. I know we're seeing so many things in our nation with the legal system just kind of going upside down. And I think this falls right in line with what we're seeing across the nation with the courts. But as Rhonda and Jeff stated, we hope that the Muscogee Creek Nation Supreme Court can right this wrong, and that we can just focus on the law. We know if we can focus on the law and the treaty, that we're going to be successful. But if they allow the nation leadership to continue to try to bully and intimidate like they try to do with Judge Mauser, if they allow that to happen, then as Rhonda said, we don't know what's going to happen there. But the facts and the law are on our side, and we're looking forward to July 26th at 10 a.m. As Jeff said, to have our victory affirmed. With that, I'll take a few questions.
I think my first question, I just want to make sure that I understand it for myself. Are these two additional justices that's going to expand the court, or are they replacing justices on the court?
That's an excellent question. And so underneath the Muscogee Creek Nation Supreme Court, they have 7 justices. And what happens in many court cases across this nation, including the Creek Nation, justices have to recuse themselves for different reasons. And so one of the reasons that, like Justice Amos McNack, we asked for him to recuse because he wrote the Constitution, or he was part of the Constitution in 1979, which is what we are challenging. And so at that point, like any court across this nation, you just go with the justices that are left. It doesn't say that you have to have all 7 justices hear a case. That's never been a law across this nation in history. But what the Creek Nation decides, we're just going to take this opportunity and put 2 special justices on just for this case. Now imagine, we've been litigating this for years. We've had all type of rulings and hearings related to the Creek Nation Supreme Court already. And they're just gonna put these 2 people over here just for our hearing and for them to vote. It's completely absurd. It's like, it's so out of bounds. We have not found any example of this in the history of courts that we've looked at throughout this nation.
So typically they would go with just the 5 justices, since that's a number that they could still make a decision.
Absolutely.
Instead of adding, is what you're saying.
That's the constitutional makeup of the court. It's not the constitutional makeup that you have to have 7 people at all times. And that's why this is unconstitutional. So you're taking one branch of government and they passed a statute, a law to say, we can do this. But the Constitution says who and how people become Supreme Court justices. There's nothing in their Constitution that allows them to do what they're doing. They know this, and yet they still did it.
So if I can follow up on that. Just to be clear, you requested for the recusal of one of the justices?
Yes,
is that right?
that's correct.
And just one or 2?
Correct, just one.
Okay. And so it seems, I know you just pointed out that this is, to say the least, highly unusual, but it seems in legal procedures there has to be some legal bearing for it. Is there no legal bearing for this action?
This is completely unconstitutional. And as we pointed out in a document that you're about to get a copy of, this is completely illegal, unlawful, unconstitutional, unprecedented for this type of, imagine this would be the same as the United States Supreme Court. It's one of the justices, let's say Justice Kagan, she couldn't sit on a particular case. But then the President Biden would be able to go out and pick, I want this person to sit on this case just for this particular case. And the Senate said, okay, that sounds good. That person hears the case, and then they go back off the court and Kagan comes back on to fulfill her term. It's ridiculous.
Right. So from Ms. Grayson and Mr.
Kennedy.
Kennedy, you have legacy, you've got family, you've got freedmen going back for some time.
Oh,
I wonder if you could, just for 1 minute, reflect on, you're speaking for your ancestors too. How would they feel about this kind of decision?
I think that the ancestors would be outraged. And when I say ancestors, I don't only just mean those with African blood. I mean those who are quote unquote full bloods. I believe that they would be outraged at this action because our ancestors fought side by side with the Muscogee people. They were Muscogee people as well. They fought during the time of war. These people integrated together. They had offsprings together. And so Africans, they knew the Muscogee language, they knew English, and they knew the Creek language. So they served as a cultural bridge when they needed to speak with Europeans. So even during the time of the war, when Chief Opithe-Lahola, he said, when the war came to Indian Territory, and the rebels from Texas and the Indian rebels were chasing these people out of Indian Territory, the exodus to Kansas, Chief Opithe-Lahola, he went into the enslaved camps and he said, if you follow me to Kansas, you will be as free as your masters. And so these African Creeks, along with the Muscogee people, they fought 3 battles along the way together. I mean, there is an insert that talks about how these African Creeks, they were armed and they fought side by side with all Muscogee people on this journey. And so I think that they would be very displeased with the actions of the Creek Nation because they looked at those African Creeks as their brothers. And so they would be displeased. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
Before Jeff, this burrs out into the document. I don't want to get too far down into the history, even though we'd love to talk about it. But at the treaty negotiations, remember, she's talking about the war, she's talking about the Civil War. A lot of the Creek Nation who did enslave, they went with the Confederacy. And so at the end of the Civil War, when they were negotiating the Treaty of 1866, that Confederate band of the Creek Nation did not want, they tried to keep out Creeks of African descent. And yet the loyal Creeks, like the chief she named, said, absolute not. We will not sign this treaty unless we have our Creek of African descent brothers and sisters a part of our nation. So she's not just saying something that she's just thinking up. This is documented history within the treaty negotiations itself of the Treaty of 1866, which is the treaty that we are litigating under today. Jeff, did you want to say anything else?
Well, I just wanted to say that Ron and I basically have the same kinfolk. However, I have just a slightly different line because my ancestor was actually sold or purchased by one of the Creek slaveholders by the name of Robert Grierson in 1780. I always tell everybody we don't have an oral history, we have a documented history. And so with that said, the people that actually came over the Trail of Tears, I just lost my thought, and I'm sorry about that. No, but I'm just saying that basically my great-great-grandfather entrusted the family to take them into Indian Territory along the Trail of Tears. And of course, he would be pissed to find out what they did to us. And I'm talking about my ancestor, Chinichaki, which is known as Little Jimmy. He was half Creek or half Reed, half Indian, half colored, but he married a black woman. So when you talk about the people that were African and African Indian, that would be my people. And they still hadn't figured that out because they denied me citizenship.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I want to ask, so this, the appointment of these justices by the Muscogee Nation happened in June, from what I'm seeing, was that, and then when did you hear about it?
Yeah, we understand it happened sometime in June. I was traveling when I got the emails and learned about it, and once we did the research, and like I said, we were just completely floored by that this actually occurred. And we have not received, this is a great question because to date, we haven't received anything from the Creek Nation. We haven't received anything from the court system. We just know that this has occurred, and that's why we filed our documents with the justices yesterday, or asking them to declare this law unconstitutional and void.
And that, is that like an appeal? How would you describe what you did?
We asked for what's called an application for original jurisdiction. And DJ, can you pass it out to them?
One of each?
Yeah, one of each. So what you're passing out is actually the motion that we filed, the application for original jurisdiction with the Muscogee Creek Nation Supreme Court, and also the law as we understand that was passed. Well, if there aren't any more questions, the last thing I want to say is, many times you hear the Creek Nations. Oh, you have a question? Go ahead.
Yes, sorry, there are papers
Okay.
I just wanted to ask, have you filed a recusal motion against Jennings for the statements he's made, like, on the case, or do you plan to file a recusal motion?
We do plan to file a recusal motion. In fact, today is a sovereignty day, so they're not open. But that motion is ready to be written, and it will be filed in the morning. So in addition to the original application for jurisdiction saying that this law is unlawful and unconstitutional and void, we are filing on both special justices because the law doesn't allow that.
So just one procedural question. You talked about the hearing on the 26th. Assuming that goes forward, what's the procedure after that? Is it a one-day hearing?
Yeah, it's just an oral argument in front of the Muscogee Creek Nation Supreme Court, where the defendants will be there, arguing why they feel like this case should be overturned, and of course, we will be there, arguing why this case should be affirmed, and then they will make some type of decision in their statutes or in the court rules. They say they usually try to make decisions within 6 months. So things go, fingers crossed, maybe we can have a decision on this thing by the end of the year.
So within the next 2 weeks, because I know that hearing is on the 26th, are you hoping that the court will just go back to the 5 justices who you guys were anticipating hearing the case in front of?
Absolutely. We want the justices to make this law null and void, and let's move forward. We're happy to move forward. We're prepared to move forward. This has become an additional amount of work that we did not anticipate. We could have never anticipated something like this happening. And we hope the courts will quickly decide that this is a side issue. And we hope that the court will not be swayed or intimidated by the actions of the National Council and the principal chief, and focus on the law and not focus on the politics that's trying to mandate a decision against the Creek Freedmen. Well, last thing I'd like to say before we close out is, you hear all the time that the Creek Nation, they say, well, we shouldn't be forced to give citizenship to non-Creek people. Well, you've heard the lineage and the genealogy of my particular clients and so many Creek Freedmen. We are Creek people. As Jeff said, we're very well documented. I'm well documented coming out of the Tuskegee town of the Creek Nation, the Wynn clan. We can document, my father's here who was a citizen of the Creek Nation, and he was also denied in 1979. We received per capita payments in the 1970s like all other Creeks. We can document our history going back to our 4-time great grandparents. Very easy, it's there. So when they say that we're non-Creek people, not only is it factually inaccurate, it's highly offensive to our birthright, our heritage, and our history. Thank you.
Did you feel that stress? I did.